Romeo and Juliet, Act 3, Scene 2. What we have next in the play are two scenes that are companion scenes. The first one takes place in the Capulet's orchard, and as you might guess, of course, Juliet is here. Remember, the only time we've seen Juliet leave the house at all was when she lied to her father about going to confession and actually went and got married. So here she is, and we can guess that she's here. This is the first afternoon of the play, Monday afternoon. She is waiting for the nurse to come back to tell her what's going on in town. And the scene begins with a very lengthy soliloquy. Soliloquies are always intended to give characterization and also have something to do with the plot, usually, theme. And so here we have Juliet basically whiling away the time, wishing that the day would finally end so that it would be night and Romeo would be coming to her for their first night together after they're married. And she actually has some interesting lines here at the end of this soliloquy. About line 28, she says, "So tedious is this day as is the night before some festival, to an impatient child that hath new robes and may not wear them." She's comparing her anticipation of this night, Romeo coming to her bedroom on this night, to the same sort of anticipation children feel on the night before Christmas when they can't wait to open the presents that are there under the tree. Then the nurse shows up. The nurse walks in and immediately throws the cords, the rope ladder, on the floor into the corner. And Juliet says, "Are those the cords that Romeo had you bring?" And the nurse says, "Aye, the cords." And then she's obviously crying. And Juliet has no idea why she would be crying. And then the nurse does exactly what the nurse did before in the other companion scene, which was the scene where Juliet was waiting for her to show back up after having gone to find out whether Romeo was serious about marrying her. The nurse gives her wrong information. Uh, Juliet says, "What's wrong? What news? Why dost thou wring thy hands?" And the nurse answers, "Ah, well a day, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead." Well, the only male on Juliet's mind right now is Romeo. So as soon as she hears that, she immediately thinks that Romeo's dead. The nurse goes on to say, "We are undone, lady, we are undone." She goes on to weep and wail and say Romeo's name over and over, to the point that in line 45, Juliet actually says, "Hath Romeo slain himself?" She gets to the impression that Romeo's actually killed himself. Then we go on down, and the nurse says, "I saw the wound, I saw it with mine eyes. God save the mark, here on his manly breast, a piteous course, a bloody piteous course. Pale, pale as ashes, all bedaubed in blood, all in gore blood." So, to Juliet's mind, the nurse has seen Romeo dead. And then in line 61, after Juliet says, "Vile earth to earth resign, end motion here, and thou and Romeo press one heavy bier," then the nurse says this: "O Tybalt, Tybalt, the best friend I had. O courteous Tybalt, honest gentleman, that ever I would live to see thee dead." Well, now Juliet's left to believe that both Romeo and Tybalt are dead. And by the way, need to stop here and talk about this thing about speaking well of the dead. I cannot believe the nurse says that Tybalt was the best friend she had. I can't imagine Tybalt was very kind to the nurse or to any of the other servants. And to say that Tybalt is an honest gentleman, a courteous Tybalt, no one's ever called Tybalt that. I think the nurse is just overreacting. She's very upset. And Juliet says, "What storm is this that blows so contrary? My dear loved cousin and my dearer lord." Notice what she says, "My dear loved cousin." She loved Tybalt, but "my dearer lord." For who is living if those two are gone? And now the nurse finally tells Juliet the truth. Tybalt is gone and Romeo banished. Romeo that killed him, he is banished. Oh God, did Romeo's hand shed Tybalt's blood? It did. It did. Alas, the day it did. And Juliet responds immediately in the way you might expect her to respond, especially since she's only known her husband for less than a day. She knows that he is her family's mortal enemy, and she responds in, like I said, exactly the way you might expect. She says, and this is line about 73, "O serpent heart, hid with a flowering face." Start noticing these oxymorons and these contradictions that she has here. Juxtapositions, we call them. Fiend angelical, dove-feathered raven, wolfish ravening lamb, despised substance of divinest show, just opposite to what thou justly seemest, a damned saint, an honorable villain. And she goes on, using this language. He appeared one way, and now I find out he's killed my cousin. How can he be both? And the nurse answers, and you have to remember, the nurse is not real bright. She's very loyal to the Capulet family. She's very loyal to Juliet. She has no loyalty to Romeo whatsoever. She's been playing along with this because it's what Juliet wanted. And when she hears that Juliet is so upset with Romeo, she assumes it's over. And she says this in line 85, there's no trust, no faith, no honesty in men. All perjured, all forsworn, all naught, all dissemblers. Ah, where's my man? Give me some aquavitae. These griefs, these woes, these sorrows make me old. Shame come to Romeo. And as soon as Juliet hears that, she remembers where her loyalty lies, and she says, blistered be thy tongue for such a wish. He was not born to shame, upon his brow shame is a shame to sit, for 'tis a throne where honor may be crowned, sole monarch of the universal earth. Oh, what a beast was I to chide at him! And the nurse, who's now surprised, says, will you speak well of him that killed your cousin? And Juliet says, yes, shall I speak ill of him that is my husband? I want to stop right here and talk a little bit about age discrepancies and what's important to know about Juliet. Juliet is the best person in the play. She's the only one who is loyal and honest, and she speaks her mind. She is in a very bad situation here. She's 14 years old. We know that because way back at the beginning of the play, in Act 1, Scene 3, when she's discussing marriage with her mother, and we're going to talk about that in a moment too, the mother calls her and her nurse in, and she wants to know how old Juliet is. And at one, they reiterate this several times, but at one point in line 12, the Lady Capulet says she's not 14. So she's not 14 years old, but her mother has called her up to talk to her about marrying Count Paris. Her father had been in a conversation with Count Paris earlier today, talking about marrying him. And if that's astonishing to you, you need to realize that there are many cultures in which a person who is of childbearing age is of marrying age. And women, because they didn't live that long in those days, they got started having families very early. And so a man would be much older than a woman when they got married, simply because it took longer for the man to get ready and established to have a family. But the woman can be married as early as, in Juliet's case, 14. And to let you know how I know that that's not uncommon, you can go on over in the same scene, line 71, and her mother says, here in Verona, ladies of esteem are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years that you are now a maid. So we can think about this. If Juliet's not 14 and her mother was her mother at about the same time that she is, same age she is now, Juliet's probably 13 and her mother's between 26 and 28. However, when we turn on over to the party scene, Lord Capulet in Act 1, Scene 5 says this to one of his cousins or one of the other people that's at the party. He says, I'm looking for this exact line. Some 25 years, and then we masked. And the second man says, 'tis more, his son is elder, sir, his son is 30. So it's been 30 years since he danced and showed up at a masquerade ball like Romeo has. Well, if he's 30 years, if it's been 30 years since he was masquerading like Romeo is, let's say that he was 25 when he got married, he's probably somewhere around 55 or 60. And his wife is 26 to 28. That was not that uncommon. I tell you all this to tell you that Juliet is a very young, very innocent, very naive, pure Catholic girl who's just gotten married. She is very much in love with Romeo, but more importantly, she has devoted herself to him and has sworn a vow earlier this afternoon. All that to be said, that when she hears the nurse curse Romeo, she quickly comes to his. And now we see characterization again. Because the first thing Juliet does once she's had her outburst is immediately become rational. And she starts thinking, Romeo killed Tybalt. Why would he do such a stupid thing? We just got married. Why would he kill my cousin? He's supposed to come over here for our wedding night, and he kills my cousin on the way? That doesn't make any sense. And so Juliet starts working it out. She says, ah, poor my lord, I'm on line 97. Ah, poor my lord, what tongue shall smooth thy name when I, thy 3 hours wife, have mangled it? But wherefore, villain? Remember, the word wherefore means why, not where. Wherefore, Romeo? Wherefore art thou Romeo? She wasn't asking why is he Romeo. She wasn't asking where is Romeo. She's asking why it had to be Romeo. But wherefore, villain, didst thou kill my cousin? That villain cousin would have killed my husband. Back, foolish tears, back to your native spring. Your tributary drops belong to woe, which you mistaking offer up to joy. My husband lives, that Tybalt would have slain, and Tybalt's dead that would have slain my husband. Okay, so she's worked it out. Tybalt's dead, but he would have killed my husband, so I'm glad he's dead. My husband's alive, who Tybalt would have killed, that's good news, so why am I still crying? All this is comfort, wherefore weep I then? Some word there was, worser than Tybalt's death, that murdered me. I would forget it fain, but oh, it presses to my memory, like damned guilty deeds to sinners' minds. Tybalt is dead, and Romeo banished. Skip on down to line 121, but with a rearward following Tybalt's death, Romeo is banished. To speak that word is father, mother, Tybalt, Romeo, Juliet, all slain, all dead. Romeo is banished, and there is no end, no limit, measure bound in that word's death. No words can that woe sound. If Romeo is banished and she cannot see him, it's as if everyone else is dead. That's an important thing to remember because we know how this ends. Then she says to the nurse, "Where is my father and my mother, nurse?" The nurse tells her they're inside weeping for Tybalt. Then she says, on line 132, Juliet says, "Poor ropes, you are beguiled. Both you and I, for Romeo is exiled. He made you for a highway to my bed, but I, a maid, die maiden widowed. Come cords, come nurse, I'll to my wedding bed, and death, not Romeo, take my maidenhead." This is the second time Juliet has threatened suicide. The first time was kind of lightheartedly, like you might hear somebody say, "If I fail that test, I'm going to kill myself." When she first saw Romeo, she said under her breath, "If he be married, I will die." Let me just find that real quick. Yes, it's toward the end of the masquerade ball scene. She tells the nurse she wants to find out who he is, and as the nurse leaves, she says, "Go ask his name. If he be married, my grave is like to be my wedding bed." Nearly exactly the same thing as what she's just said, but this time it sounds like she means it a little more. And so Juliet has just said that she's going to kill herself because Romeo can't come to see her tonight. And this is how the nurse responds: "Hie to your chamber. I'll find Romeo to comfort you. I wot well where he is." We can all guess. "Hark ye, your Romeo will be here at night. I'll to him, he is hid at Lawrence's cell." And Juliet says, "Oh, find him, give this ring to my true knight, and bid him come to take his last farewell." In a companion scene, Romeo has gone straight to Friar Lawrence's cell, where, believe it or not, he's actually crying more than Juliet does in this scene. And we're going to see that scene next. Notice that she sends a ring with the nurse. The ring kind of just disappears, kind of like Benvolio did. It's kind of a hole in the plot. I wish that the ring played more symbolism in the newer version of the movie with Claire Danes and Leonardo DiCaprio. It does. He's wearing it around his neck whenever he sees her for the last time. And so she sends a ring. She knows Romeo's going to be in despair. She's smart. She's a lot less emotional than Romeo is. And so she sends the ring to let him know she still loves him, even though he killed her cousin. In the next scene, Act 3, Scene 3, we're going to see Romeo in a companion scene in the cell with Friar Lawrence, where Friar Lawrence is going to have to do his best to talk Romeo off a ledge.